They're unleashing a inflationary holocaust because they don't know what else to do, and they're making mistakes.
All right.
They don't produce inflation for one simple reason. They do not own a printing press on which you can turn out green pieces of paper. The only such printing press is in Washington. I say printing press, of course, in the modern age we do it in a more sophisticated way. We use bookkeepers and accountants and computers. But it comes down to the same thing. Inflation is made in Washington because only Washington can create money. And any other attribution to other groups of inflation is wrong. Consumers don't produce it. Producers don't produce it. The trade unions don't produce it. Foreign sheiks don't produce it. Oil imports don't produce it. What produces it is too much government spending and too much government creation of money and nothing else. Yes, sir.
So I'm just gonna do a few comments regarding this. This is exactly the same thing we did in 2008. In 2009 we lowered rates to basically zero. We've just been printing money and flooding inflation. But we got lucky last time. What happened is the money didn't go into commodities, into things we actually use. The money went to asset prices. So this is where inflation was for all the years. Inflation went into the stock market, into crypto, it went into assets prices, it went into everything. That's why we call this the everything bubble. We're gonna have higher and higher inflation, and now we have to raise rates. As we have kept rates for so low for so long, the next financial crisis is gonna be the worst in 70 years. This is what Jim Rogers taught me. Back to Milton Friedman and the history and what happened. Let's learn from history.
In 1973, Japanese housewives going to market were faced with an unpleasant fact. The cash in their purses seemed to be losing its value. Prices were starting to soar as the awful story of inflation began to unfold once again. The Japanese government knew what to do. What's more, they were prepared to do it. When it was all over, economists were able to record precisely what had happened. In 1971, the quantity of money started to grow more rapidly. As always happens, inflation wasn't affected for a time. But by late 1972, it started to respond. In early 73, the government reacted. It started to cut monetary growth, but inflation continued to soar for a time. The delayed reaction made 1973 a very tough year of recession. Inflation tumbled only when the government demonstrated its determination to keep monetary growth in check. It took 5 years to squeeze inflation out of the system. Japan had attained relative stability. Unfortunately, there's no way to avoid the difficult road the Japanese had to follow before they could have both low inflation and a healthy economy. First, they had to live through a recession until slow monetary growth had its delayed effect on inflation. Inflation is just like alcoholism. In both cases, when you start drinking or when you start printing too much money, the good effects come first. The bad effects only come later. That's why, in both cases, there's a strong temptation to overdo it, to drink too much and to print too much money. When it comes to the cure, it's the other way around. When you stop drinking or when you stop printing money, the bad effects come first and the good effects only come later. That's why it's so hard to pursue.
What do we need from our G7 leaders this weekend?
Well, what they need to do is, go down to the bar and have a beer and leave the rest of us alone. Let the people who are sound succeed and let the other people fail. And Jeff, what I'm afraid of is they're going to keep doing what they've been doing, which the market hates. You can see the market hates it, because this is going to unleash rampant inflation around the world, rampant confusion in the currency markets, and you're going to have currencies gyrating all over the world. Bond markets are going to start to collapse, and then we're going to have a real problem. And that's why the stock market understands this. They're unleashing a inflationary holocaust because they don't know what else to do. They're making mistakes.
All right, and if I can just bring it back to Asia once again, because the Asian economies depend so much on what happens in the U.S. And yeah, you could let these companies go bankrupt. You could let this creative destruction take place in the Western financial system. But that's going to impact the exporters in Asia, the economies in Asia. So hence, people want to find a way to solve the problem and have this ordinary or ordered deleveraging. Is there anything Asian economies or Asian policymakers can do to help?
Well, what they should continue to do is to save their money, keep their powder dry, and try to maintain stability in their own countries. Singapore's got gigantic reserves. Why should they throw them into the breach to bail out America? They better take care of themselves. China, the same thing. Japan, the same thing. They should not be stepping into the breach to help people who made mistakes.
Let me bring in our guest host who's been staying with us very patiently there, Adrian Mowat in Hong Kong. Adrian, you've got a question for Jim, right?
Hi, Jim. I'm not quite sure if I understand this idea about inflation, hyperinflation. We seem to be in a deleveraging event, which is an amazingly fast deleveraging event, which is inherently deflationary.
Well, Adrian, when you print gigantic amounts of money and you flood the world with money throughout history, that has led to inflation. What I said was we're coming out of this. They're setting the stage for when we come out of this of a massive inflationary holocaust was the word I used. That's what I meant. Right now, yes, everything is being liquidated. Everything is being liquidated. It doesn't matter about the fundamentals. But that's what I was explaining too. In a period like this, the way you make money coming out of it is to own the things where the fundamentals have not been impaired.
Jim, very good speaking with you from London here. Thanks so much for giving us your time this morning as we try and address exactly why these equity markets are down so heavily in the Asian sector.
What's different now than any time in history is that the whole world has done this. The whole world had printed money and kept rates at basically as low as possible. Like Sweden had -1% interest rates. What you're basically doing, you're telling everybody that they should take up debt because it's basically free to borrow. And people who haven't taken up debt since 2008. So can you imagine we have to raise rates for so many years and keep it high and take inflation seriously and just tell the market we're gonna kill consumption, we're gonna keep rates high. This is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. But the central bank has to do this. But the thing is, the governments have even a lot of debt. So it's very difficult for politicians to do the right thing. As Milton Friedman said, this is why it's hard. The bad effect comes like this, fast. The good effects comes later. So that's why it's so hard. So I'm trying to spread the word, to tell the politicians, tell everybody this is the right thing to do. Like, stop printing money. I know it's hard, but this is what we have to do. I don't want to do it because my industry is gonna suffer. We have to do this. We can't let inflation run high. Last time we let inflation run high in the Weimar Republic, we got people like Hitler in power. Is this what we want? Is this really the future of Europe and the world? I really hope it isn't. Please spread this to everybody. Let everybody know what the hell's going on and who to blame. Put pressure on the central bank to set up interest rates above the rate of inflation. If the inflation is 10% in your country, central bank has to raise rates above the rate of inflation. Cost what it costs. It's better than let the whole country go to pieces. I hope we do the right thing. This is Charlie Munger talking about inflation. He's one of the best investors in the world.
Very serious subject. You can argue it's the way democracies die. So it's a huge danger once you've got a populace that learns it can vote itself money. If you look at the Roman Republic, they inflated the currency steadily for hundreds of years, and eventually the whole damn Roman Empire collapsed. So it's the biggest long-run danger we have, probably, apart from nuclear war. The safe assumption for an investor is that over the next 100 years, the currency is going to zero. That's my working hypothesis.
Charlie is right. Look at the purchasing power of the dollar. This is since the central bank was put in effect. So their job was to keep the currency strong. And why is the dollar important? Because the dollar is the world reserve currency. Everything is tied to the dollar. So if the dollar goes down, all of the currencies go down. You can call it as the Titanic. We're kind of like the rowboats around the Titanic. So the Titanic is going down, we're all tied to it, so it's kind of just pushing us all down. And if the United States, since they're printing so much money, so if they don't stop printing money and everybody continues to printing money, we're gonna end up like the Titanic. It's just that the currency is gonna become worthless. I hope they don't do that, but they've been doing that so far, so kind of losing hope. The crazy thing is the dollar's probably gonna go up a lot in the next financial crisis, because it is still the currency of the world. The dollar's still king, even though the king's kinda doesn't have the throne, but he is the king, you know. Anyways, New Year starting in a few hours, so I just wanna say to everybody Happy New Year. There's a lot of stuff to be depressed about, but hey, the world is it's richer now than it's ever been in the history of the world, so we should be kind of grateful, but also keep an eye on what the hell they're doing with our money.